Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series Doubting Philosophical Distinctions Necessary a priori, analytic, and Where They Fall Apart with Kant, Kripke, and Quine. In this video we're going to be looking at Kripke's necessary a posteriori statements. So, Kripke used the concept of a rigid designator to argue that there are some statements which are necessary, true in all possible worlds, and a posteriori, knowable only through experience. If you've not checked out my previous video on rigid designators, you may want to do that now. So, since two rigid designators pick out the same object in all possible worlds, a statement that claims that two rigid designators which refer to the same object are identical is necessarily true in all possible worlds. Basically what we're saying here is if we have one rigid designator and it picks out this one object, object X, in all possible worlds, and another rigid designator that picks out this object, object Y, in all possible worlds, and X and Y are the same thing, then both of those two different rigid designators pick out the same object in all possible worlds, which means that any statement that X equals Y or X is the same as Y is going to be true in all possible worlds. All right? So one example might be Superman is Clark Kent is true in all possible worlds since both of the terms are rigid designators, and they both pick out the same object. Kripke uses the example of Hesperus is phosphorus. As in, Hesperus and phosphorus were both names in the ancient world for Venus, but people then weren't aware that they were actually naming the same heavenly body, Venus, both Hesperus and phosphorus. Because Hesperus and phosphorus are both rigid designators, they're going to refer to Venus in all possible worlds. The statement Hesperus is phosphorus is always going to be true. It's going to be necessary because in all possible worlds, those terms succeed at referring to Venus, at least in worlds in which Venus exists. Therefore, the statement Hesperus is phosphorus is necessary. So, Kripke's example is particularly interesting since it was believed for a long time that Hesperus and phosphorus were in fact different heavenly bodies. One appeared in the evening, one in the morning. It was later discovered by astronomers that they were in fact the same object. This is interesting because this means that the claim, Hesperus is phosphorus, is only knowable through experience. We can only find it out by looking at the world and discovering, wow, Hesperus and phosphorus are exactly the same thing, despite the claim being necessarily true in all possible worlds. Therefore, this claim is both necessary and a posteriori. To give another example, Superman and Clark Kent pick out the same individual in all possible worlds, because they are rigid designators. However, Lois Lane needs empirical evidence to learn that Superman is Clark Kent is true. She can't just discover this by thinking about the concepts Superman and Clark Kent. Therefore, the statement Superman is Clark Kent is necessary, true in all possible worlds, and a posteriori, only knowable through experience. What do you think? Are there necessary a posteriori truths? If not, how would you classify these types of statements? Are you skeptical of Kripke's idea of rigid designators, or are you skeptical of something else in this? Please leave your comments below. In the next video, we're going to take a look at Kripke's contingent a priori statement, so the reverse of what we just did. Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.